Imagine a single point on the map that embodies strategic and historical interests in a colossal war. At the heart of the Sahara Desert, the Nile stands out as Egypt's main source of life. Since ancient times, this river has been vital in sustaining a civilization that shaped the entire world. Its waters transform barren lands into fertile fields and support the majority of the country's population, both in the past and today. The role of the Nile has shaped the history, economy, and even the identity of a significant part of the African continent, especially Egypt. Its waters have nourished crops, supplied cities, and connected different regions of the country throughout history. The very location of Egyptian civilizations, from the pharaonic era to the present day, was determined by their proximity to the river. With over 100 million inhabitants, Egypt has about 95% of its population living near the river, in an area that provides fertile soil for agriculture and space for the country's largest cities. Without the Nile, much of the territory would be uninhabitable, dominated by the sands of the desert. However, the Nile is also a hotspot for geopolitical tension. Controlling its waters is essential to ensuring the country's water security, a challenge that becomes increasingly evident amid regional disputes. To understand this dependence, we must explore how Egypt's geography influences its relationship with the river and the vital role it plays in the stability of not just the country, but the entire region. While most of Egypt is dominated by the Sahara Desert, one of the most inhospitable regions in the world, the Nile cuts through this vastness like a corridor of life. Its banks form a fertile strip that not only allows human survival, but also supports agriculture and large populations. The river flows from south to north, emptying into the Mediterranean Sea, and along its path, it divides the desert into two parts, the Western Desert and the Eastern Desert. This natural division, besides concentrating life along the river, historically served as a barrier against invasions, protecting Egypt from external threats and ensuring a degree of stability in its history. In the north, the Nile Delta is one of the country's most fertile and productive regions. Formed over thousands of years through sediment deposits, this area is essential for food production and the development of Egypt's major cities. The delta is a vast triangular area, named for its resemblance to the Greek letter delta, with the river splitting into multiple branches before reaching the sea. In the south, Upper Egypt features narrower valleys, which are equally indispensable for agriculture and the survival of its population. The Nile holds immense importance, often underestimated, as it connects different regions within Egypt and positions the country as a central link between cultures, continents, and economies in both North Africa and the Middle East. For thousands of years, its annual floods carried sediments and nutrients from the higher regions of Africa, depositing them along its banks. This natural process enabled large-scale farming, even in such an arid region. With its constant water flow, the Nile ensures that Egyptian agriculture is less reliant on rainfall, an extremely scarce resource in the country. This water stability allowed the development of a highly productive agricultural system. Crops like wheat, barley, and cotton thrive along the river, sustaining not only the local population, but also the national economy. Beyond its fertile lands, the Nile provides other indispensable resources. Its waters are used for urban supply, irrigation, and even power generation. Over centuries, Egyptians have learned to make the most of the river, from fishing in its waters to transporting goods, reinforcing its role as an economic and social lifeline. However, this reliance also presents challenges. Managing the Nile's waters requires careful planning and cooperation to prevent waste or internal and regional conflicts. The fertility and resources offered by the river ensure Egypt's survival, but also highlight how crucial it is to the country's stability. This direct connection between the Nile and Egyptian security becomes even clearer when examining how geography provides defensive advantages. The Sahara Desert, which covers most of Egypt, acts as an almost impenetrable natural barrier. These vast stretches of sand have historically hindered the movement of invading armies, protecting Egypt from external threats for centuries. The Nile, besides being a source of life, also serves as a strategic defensive barrier. Its course creates a natural division in the territory, which has always made it easier to monitor movements along its banks. During the Pharaonic period, for example, the river functioned as an internal frontier, enabling the rapid mobilization of troops and resources to defend the country. Another defensive advantage lies in the placement of Egyptian cities. Major urban centers like Cairo are strategically positioned along the Nile, shielded by the expanse of the desert and with easy access to water. This combination of natural barriers and water resources made Egypt less vulnerable to direct enemy attacks and helped solidify its status as a regional power throughout history. However, this privileged position also attracted foreign ambitions. From Roman invasions to modern campaigns, Egypt has always been at the center of disputes due to its strategic location. This underscores the Nile's role as a key factor in Egypt's security and stability. But the Nile's importance isn't confined to Egyptian territory. The river flows through 11 African countries, making it one of the largest river systems in the world and a cornerstone of regional stability. However, this interdependence generates constant tensions, particularly among Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia, which rely heavily on the river's waters for their populations and economies. Egypt, located at the Nile's end, holds a unique yet vulnerable position. And here lies the core of rising tensions that could spark a dangerous conflict in the future. As the last country to receive the waters of the Nile River, Egypt depends heavily on decisions made by the nations along its basin. In Ethiopia's case, which controls the sources of the Blue Nile, this relationship has become even more delicate with the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam GERD, an ambitious project that aims to redefine the use of the river in the region. For Ethiopia, the dam is essential to generate energy and drive its economic development. For Egypt, however, the project is seen as a threat to its water security, which is crucial for agriculture and the survival of its population. This dispute underscores not only the Nile's importance as a natural resource, but also its strategic significance, with direct implications for regional stability and the balance of power. In Sudan, the Nile also plays a vital role, and the dam evokes mixed reactions. On the one hand, Sudan hopes to benefit from the energy generated by the structure. On the other, it fears that Ethiopia's control over the waters could negatively impact its agriculture, which relies heavily on the river's flow. Thus, the Nile becomes both a symbol of cooperation and conflict, with the future of millions of people hinging on a delicate balance between national and regional interests. The GERD is one of Africa's largest infrastructure projects and a landmark in harnessing the Blue Nile, the Nile's main tributary. In addition to transforming Ethiopia's energy grid, providing electricity to millions, the dam promises to boost the country's economic development while reshaping hydrological and geopolitical dynamics across the Nile basin. Standing 145 meters tall and capable of storing billions of cubic meters of water, the GERD is more than a monumental construction. It is a source of significant regional tension. For Egypt, Ethiopia's control over the flow of the Blue Nile represents a direct threat. Egypt relies on the river to irrigate its crops, supply its cities, and sustain its dams, such as the Aswan High Dam, which is critical for energy production. Any substantial reduction in water flow could trigger an unprecedented water crisis, jeopardizing the food and energy security of millions of Egyptians. Negotiations between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia remain stalled, marked by mistrust and deadlocks. Ethiopia defends the dam as a symbol of its sovereignty and a driver of its development, while Egypt views it as an existential threat, a potential blow to its ability to support its population. Sudan, caught in the middle, recognizes the benefits of the energy the dam could provide, but fears the impact of Ethiopian control over the river on its water management and agriculture. This stalemate has created palpable tensions that threaten the stability of the entire region. Without a clear agreement on the dam's operation and filling process, the risk of conflict escalates. The growing competition for water resources in a world where water is becoming increasingly scarce only worsens the situation. The GERD has become a symbol of this dispute, a flashpoint in an already strained geopolitical chessboard shaped by historical and economic rivalries. The Nile, which has sustained life and civilization for millennia, is now a battlefield where the survival of nations is at stake. For Egypt, losing control over the river's flow is simply unacceptable. Historically, Egypt has always treated access to the Nile's waters as a top national security priority. Since the 1959 agreement with Sudan, the country has secured the largest share of the river's flow. However, Ethiopia has never recognized this agreement, arguing that it was signed without its participation and fails to account for the interests of other basin countries. This lack of legal consensus is one of the primary roots of the current conflict. In recent years, negotiations to resolve the stalemate over the operation of the dam have repeatedly failed. The lack of diplomatic progress, combined with statements from Egyptian leaders suggesting that all options are on the table, heightens fears of military escalation. Any armed conflict over control of the Nile would not only devastate the directly involved countries, but could also draw the attention of global powers looking to influence the region's political and economic balance. The risk of war stems not only from disputes over water, but also from the deep mistrust among these nations. While Ethiopia continues unilaterally filling its reservoir, Egypt intensifies diplomatic efforts to gain international support and secure allies. This dynamic creates a climate of uncertainty, where cooperation seems increasingly out of reach. The future of the Nile and the region's stability depends on how these countries address this challenge in the coming decades. The undeniable truth is that Egypt's future is directly tied to the Nile. Any significant reduction in the river's flow could trigger a crisis of monumental proportions. From agriculture to urban water supply, the river is vital to Egypt's economy and social stability. A disruption to this balance could lead to escalating internal tensions, with repercussions on food security, migration, and employment. Egypt's near-total dependence on the Nile underscores the urgency of diplomatic solutions to its conflicts with Ethiopia and Sudan. Without a clear agreement on water management, Egypt faces the risk of even greater hardships, particularly in a context of climate change that could exacerbate water scarcity in the region. Moreover, any instability in Egypt could ripple across North Africa and the Middle East, regions already vulnerable to social and political crises. For the broader region, the Nile is a point of connection, but also of contention. Poorly coordinated management among the basin countries could intensify rivalries and undermine cooperative efforts such as trade, energy projects, and sustainable development. Conversely, joint efforts to equitably utilize the river's resources could transform the Nile into a unifying bridge between nations, fostering regional stability. The future of the Nile is not just a local issue, but a global one. With water scarcity on the rise worldwide, what happens along its banks serves as a warning for the challenges of water resource management in the 21st century. The challenges and disputes surrounding the Nile reveal that this river is more than a natural resource. It is a strategic lifeline shaping the history, economy, and security of millions. The balance between cooperation and conflict, as explored throughout this discussion, illustrates the complexities of managing a resource so vital to countries with vastly different needs. For Egypt, its near-total dependence on the Nile highlights the river's critical role in its survival and stability. But Ethiopia's and Sudan's ambitions show that the Nile is also a source of aspiration, where economic and energy development often clashes with the need to preserve the river's flow. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam symbolizes this dilemma. It carries the promise of progress for some and the fear of scarcity for others. How the Nile Basin countries navigate this issue will be pivotal in shaping the region's future, and could serve as a lesson for the rest of the world on the importance of shared and sustainable solutions for water resources. If you enjoyed this content and want to see more geopolitical analyses like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It helps us reach more people and create even better content. And before you go, don't forget to check out the next video already on the screen. A big hug, and see you there